The title of today's talk is, What If All You Had Was Influence? So, as you can probably guess if you've heard me talk before, influence comes from Maxwell. And John Maxwell says that leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And I think this is a very interesting concept, simply because when you start to break it down, it really runs kind of counterintuitive to what most people think of as leadership or management or really just life in general. And so we were at this dinner, and the question was posed, okay, so what do you view is leadership? And I kind of gave my definition along the lines of Maxwell. I've always kind of subscribed to that as, leadership is influence. And then we got to talking, and each of them kind of gave their definition, and it kind of dawned on me, which is why today's talk is called What If All You Had Was Influence, when I said leadership is the absence of power. Leadership, true leadership, is acting as if all we have at our disposal is influence. Because at the end of the day, influence is just that. It's not power, it's not control, it's very lack of control when you break it down to what truly great leadership is. But we categorize management or a promotion or a higher role or whatever it is with having more control, right? It's well, I get to tell everybody what to do, or I get to make all the rules, or I get to create the process, or I get to, come down on somebody if they don't follow what they're supposed to do. And really, what I'd like to talk about, or more so, just kind of give a different perspective. And so I think we all struggle. This isn't like a, hey, if you don't view it as influence, you're wrong. It's more so that dichotomy of balancing it out, right? It's understanding that we can go both directions, and we will on a daily basis. We'll go places where we forget that our true goal is to develop people and to teach them and to allow them to learn. And we'll go for the quick fix of, I told you what to do. Why didn't you just do it like this? Well, this is how you do it. Well, here's the new process. Well, here's the bulleted list. Whatever it may be. And the true measure of leadership, in my mind, is being able to balance that out. In management, do we have to come out with process? 100%. We can't just, well, you know what, guys? We're going to go throw all the rules out the window. We're going to go influence only. We'll see what we get done. Probably not going to work, right? We have to have some sort of process in what we're doing, but it's once we establish that process, once we establish those kind of guidelines, what do we do with it? Do we just manage to a T on those processes, or do we look more the influence route? And so the fight when kind of that level before you get into a role of, being quote unquote a manager or a management position, is getting people to understand how you get there. A lot of people will associate that as, well, I want more power, or that's the next step, or, well, I've been doing this for however many years, I guess that's where I should go. And what I encourage people to do is to, one, understand that as a manager, you actually have less power. You actually have less control over the outcome that you may have had complete control over. So what do I mean by that? So let's take an example from our business. So we've got Dave here. This is a great example. Dave's here, install manager. Well, Dave used to install equipment. Well, he had complete control over the outcome of that job that he was on. 100%. Great installer, could put it in, make sure that it performed properly, no step was missed, customer was taken care of, the whole nine. Now he's got 18 crews. Well, the one thing that he can't do is be in 18 places at one time. So he's got to give up control. You have to relinquish control, because the person that wants to control all 18 is going to be the person that fails. Because one, you can't do it. It's impossible. And two, you're going to drive everyone nuts trying to do that. Because you only have so much of the information. And your job as a leader is to empower people, is to grow them, is to put them in a place where you don't need to micromanage them. You don't really need to manage them at all. All you're there to do is provide support and to keep them growing. Now, will others need more direction than some other people on your? Absolutely, yeah. Everyone's going to need a little bit more, a little bit less, a little bit different kind of love, maybe a pat on the back, or maybe coming down a little bit harder on somebody, and that's how they get through, and that's how they like to receive feedback. But understanding that as you progress in your journey, you are going to have less control. To the point where you got to be really comfortable with having very, very little control. Because as you move and you manage more people, your control gets less and less. But on the flip side, you have to understand where influence comes in. Because at the end of the day, your job is to influence and support. And that becomes harder and harder the more people you get. You know, I always look at, there was one day when we had when I started, we had 20 people here. So control, you could have a lot of control over the entire thing. Like you knew how many jobs, there weren't that many jobs going on. You could, make sure everybody was doing what they were doing. Now they had to go out on their own, but you could still you could manage the whole thing. Well, as it grew, what I ultimately saw was my dad was very used to the control piece. They were small. They were, that's the way that he operated. Very successful, but just not as many people, not as many, things going on and stuff like that, which is perfectly normal to think about. When you start a business and you were the only one at one time and you could control the outcome of every job that you were on, because he did every job that they went on at one time, and to think that others are going out there, and then to compound that, we're going to screw up every once in a while, right? And then that just makes it even harder to come to grips with, oh shoot, I don't have control, and Johnny over there messed this up, and the customer's mad, and so on and so forth. And it's very easy to revert back to, well, I got to control everything Johnny does. Well, what's he doing? Why is he doing this? Where's he going? What's he doing? He can't do this. Yeah. And what you end up doing is you end up stunning your growth as a leader and really their growth as well. And so what we have to look at is, again, are we willing to give up control? And when we do, how are we going to influence? So what are the strategies? How are we going to gain influence if we agree with the fact that we can't control everything? So the can't control everything, that's a pretty easy thing to come by. Like if I asked Dave, can you control all the installs that are going on today? He'd tell me, no, I can't. Okay, well, that's step one. Now step two is, okay, well, how can I have influence over my group of guys? Here in about 45 minutes, he's going to go out there and he's going to see 18 crews standing there, and he knows that I can't control what they do, I can't control what they do, I can't control what they do, I can't control what they do. Can't. So sorry to disappoint if you thought that was going to be today. I know you didn't, but how is he going to gain influence? Well, there's 4 distinct ways that you can gain influence with the people that you lead. So the first is character. So this is an ongoing, daily process. How do you conduct yourself? How do you carry yourself? We talked a little bit about it yesterday at the all-company meeting. One of our values is lead ourselves. How you do anything is how you do everything. So how do you show up to your people? Even if you're not a leader, how do you show up in the group? There's many meetings that I have that I really look forward to some people contributing to the meeting because of how they come to the meeting, their outlook on things, their perspective. It's always a, hey, I think we could do it this way, or hey, did we ever try this, or hey, that was a really awesome idea. This is kind of some of the just about the process, about the team, and that comes in all different shapes and sizes. We're all not the person who wants to raise their hand for every question. Some of us are more reserved. I would consider myself a more reserved person when it comes to being in a group. You've all got those people that, like, I get it, you know every answer. Awesome, man. Relax on the hand raising. But those people that understand that my character is first and foremost, and at the end of the day, all of us, regardless of what we do in life, you're judged on your character and your values. That's where your legacy as whoever you want to aspire to become, that's where it starts and that's where it ends, is your character. How you bring yourself to the forefront in whatever situation it is. It becomes even more important as you begin to lead people. So when you're part of a team, and this is the part that I try to stress so many times to people is, you get people who want to ascend, they want to be a manager, they want to, lead people, or, hey, I don't want to be a technician all my life. I want to be a this or that or whatever it is, and they can't even do the little things right. Like, you can't show up, you call in all the time, you have a bad attitude, you have all of this. It's like, buddy, that's not a recipe for doing anything more. Like, that is a recipe for staying in that same seat for the next 5 years, because no one's going to follow you. And that's what leadership is about. That's what influence is about. Influence is about creating character that people say, you know what? He or she, they've really got it going on. They really are heading in the right direction. They've got their stuff together. They're on top of it. They've got integrity. They're honest. They're caring. They're compassionate. All of those things are part of leadership, are part of influence. Think about the people that you look up to. Probably people of high character. Not many people look up to people and say, well, I know he did 10 years in jail, but, great guy, love to lead, love to follow him. No. No one has any, maybe there's an example of something, but, my Lord, your character is going to lead you to influencing others. The next is relationships. So you got your character. Well, in order to lead people, you can't just have great character. You got to build relationships with people. People got to want to follow you. Well, they're not going to want to follow you if they don't know anything about you. If they don't know who you are or what you're about. That doesn't mean you have to share everything. I get it. Too much information. I've been there too. Whoa, hello. Hey, don't need to be part of this conversation. But at the end of the day, if you're truly going to lead people, you've got to get to know them. And that's why we are so adamant about one-on-ones here, so adamant about, there's the line between personal and business for me is very blurry. And I like it like that. Because at the end of the day, yeah, there's people out there, leave your personal life at home. Who does that? No. You're thinking about your kids, you think about your wife, think about things you got to do at home. That's just part of life. We come here to work so that we can go home and spend time with our family and do fun things and all of that stuff. The hope is that we can do a lot of the same stuff at work that we do at home. We can influence at work and influence at home. I think one of the biggest things that I have learned, and hopefully I have become a better husband as a result, but the biggest thing that I learned here is that I really suck at being a leader at home. Like I can, like this in a business setting is pretty like natural, you know? I mean like, you know, hey, I got to show up really good, I got to have good character, but then I'll find myself at home times with my wife being like, that is the opposite of leadership. Being combative, being, you know, getting in an argument or like, that is the opposite of leadership. So I have really tasked myself with trying to understand as it relates to, you know, obviously my most sacred relationship is with my wife and with my kids, but I feel like sometimes that can get forgotten. But how can I make all my relationships beneficial? How can I show that, hey man, I care about you. Hey, we're here for you. You know, whatever you got going on, hey, if you need, you know, you need to talk or you need a resource or whatever it is, we're here for you. And understanding that is, you know, some people ask me, how do you build your culture? Why is your culture like it is? Or what advice would you give? And my advice is very simple. It's you care, you know? I mean, it's not, we don't do anything super duper special here. Simple business. We just give a damn. Like, you care about the people that are here, you care about the customer, you take good care of them. What's left? You don't really have to do much after that. It's pretty simple. It's when you want to take advantage of people or treat people like crap that things start to get sideways. Culture is an ongoing activity. I always tell people that. Culture is not a put up a fancy break room or a ping pong table and voila. Culture is an ongoing thing. Culture is about building relationships. And as you lead people, it's your job to create that culture. You're in charge of it. So there's a certain culture in your department or your team. What is that culture? A lot of that culture is predicated on relationships. It's understanding what people need to feel appreciated and what people need to be supported. All of this is pretty simple, right, guys? I mean, it's not rocket science here. I'm no, genius up here. It seems pretty simple. I just take the path of least resistance. I'm not that smart. I'm just like, well, that makes pretty good sense. I'll just start caring about people. All right, cool, I can do that. And that's the biggest thing. This is so simple. And it starts with just caring about people. The next is knowledge. And not in knowledge like you would normally think. Like, ooh, well, who knows the most about plumbing, or who knows the most about HVAC, or how to answer a call, or dispatch people. No. Knowledge in this respect, as it relates to influence, is simply being open. Being understanding of new ideas. Being willing to ask great questions. Yeah, it's great that you have some technical knowledge, but guess what? There's a lot of stuff out there that you don't know. There's a ton of stuff that you may be unfamiliar with. There's a lot of stuff that you may know about, but prescribed to a different way that also works, but your team needs it in that way that you don't prescribe to. So, what do you need to do in that instance? Is your way right? Yeah, absolutely. But is someone on your team a little bit more comfortable doing it a different way that also will work? Yeah. And will that way, if that way works, then are you going to gain more influence by bending and helping them do it the way that they feel most comfortable, that achieves the outcome, or still trying to do it your way? I would guess on the performer there, helping them achieve their result. Because everybody's going to achieve a result in a different manner. So knowledge is that understanding that there is far more to learn out there than we'll ever know. And so just understanding that. I don't have all the answers, nor do I claim to. I've got an opinion. And that's really what everybody has. They have opinions. We learn every day of how to do something a little bit different or try something a little bit different. And with knowledge comes the understanding that change is okay. And knowing that change does not mean defeat or failure. Change just means we're going to learn something. You know, we just had a recent change with a way that we book drain calls. Well, we tried something to try to solve one problem. Well, it created two more. What'd we do? Well, okay. We learned from that. Not a failure. However, that old way worked pretty well, and what we learned from the new way was we could probably solve the problem by focusing on a different element of the process. What we did is we tried to mask truly what the problem was by creating a solution that created more problems. And so what doing it two different ways brought us was not failure, but the understanding of, oh my gosh, this solution created a problem over here when really we should have been looking right here. Well, okay, we learned that. Did it take us a little while? Yeah, okay, yeah. Welcome to life, you know. A lot of problems. You're like, God, so I should have saw that one coming. But the knowledge that that's okay, not a big deal. You know, luckily for us is that we live in a pretty, you know, there are some professions that are more, making a mistake means life or death, or maybe a little bit more costly than if we do. So we'll take that as a positive, which is great. And then the last, so we've got character, building relationships, knowledge, and then last is intangibles. So this is the one that is very difficult to teach. But what I have discovered is that if you are really good at the first three, you'll be pretty darn good at this one. So what do I mean by intangibles? Intangibles refer to the energy you create around you, the morale that you create around you, your timing. So timing is critical. I think this is the one thing that oftentimes a lot of leaders overlook. And then momentum. So we had an instance late last week, I think. Well, maybe it was early this week. Early this week. Yeah, Monday. Where we were going to make a change in the sales department. And what I really respected about Steve and his understanding of what we should do was his timing. You know, he noticed that these guys have been running hard. They've been running long. We've been busy since damn near January. And usually there's a lull, kind of March, get some energy, then hit the summer pretty hard. Well, we've kind of had a string of just kind of monotonous kind of busyness. It never really got super busy in June like we normally see it, but it just was very slow, monotonous kind of busyness. And he noticed kind of morale getting down, different things like that. So he looked at, okay, well, how could we potentially change up maybe a process to, one, kind of boost morale as we kind of hit the back end of summer where we can oftentimes see a drop-off because people are you just burn out. I mean, it's just you're going, you know, all the time, and you can burn out for sure. And so he made this change, and I think it's going to be extremely beneficial. But it was that understanding of, well, it didn't quite fit with our philosophy of like, hey, we do it this way, and this is the way we do it, and this is the way Nexstar teaches us to do it. And we're like, well, if we did it a little bit differently, one, we're achieving the same result. Like, it should be fine. And he looked back at past numbers when we didn't even do it the way that we were doing it about a week ago. He's like, well, they haven't really changed all that much. Okay, so the new process that we're running, yeah, I think there's some benefits to it, but what he recognized was timing-wise and morale, we may be able to gain something here without really affecting what we're trying to do. And so I was like, yeah, sure, that sounds like a great idea. So there again, understanding timing. So like finding out, and this has been big in mine because I hate conflict. So like I've like really gotten good at the timing piece because by God, I do not want a conflict. I mean, come hell or high water, I don't want to get into one. Trust me, my wife will attest. Like, hey, I'm stressed. Let's not talk about this right now. All right, hold on. Need a break. I'm going to walk outside. But what that has done for me, where that's not a great quality, completely understand, need to get better at having difficult conversations. What that has done for me is really stress the timing piece. So, like, if you're, and not that I'm not saying avoid conflict at all costs. What I'm saying is understand timing. So like if the team's down, probably not a great idea to then come in and beat them up about 4 things that they've done wrong. That's a kind of a very simple example. Or, you know, I always look at it from a technician perspective. If you got a guy who's been struggling, you have him in, you have a good conversation, you kind of understand why he's struggling. Hey, I got a lot of stuff going on at home. We're trying to, you know, the wife and I, we're moving into a new house. I'm staying up late trying to get things ready, or I got a new one on the way, and, you know, I got to get some pictures hung up, and that's personal. That's what's happening right now. I've got 3 weeks. I'm on the clock right now. I got pictures to hang. I got a whole list. You know, all of those things, well, then what would it look like if you threw that guy that's struggling a bone? Threw him a call to get him going, get that morale up, really build him up and see what he can do. There again, that's all timing. Whereas if you're following the process, if you were following strict orders, you're probably going to say, well, he's struggling, so he doesn't get this, or whatever it may be. So being able to reach outside of your process in order to influence others is critical. So there again, character, relationship, knowledge, and then the intangibles. So as I said, I think if you get really good at the first 3, intangibles, it's kind of hard to teach, right? But I think if you get good at the first 3, then the intangibles start to come, and you start to acquire those pretty quickly, for sure. So we've talked about influence. If it's the only tool we have, how do we view it when we want to move up? The things we can use to gain influence. But there's a lot of people that are saying, okay, great, influence, awesome stuff, that's fantastic, but how does this equate to me? You know, I'm out in my truck by myself today. Like, it's great, we're all sitting in this room today, but then I'm about to go get in my truck and I'll be in it by myself for the rest of the day. Or I'll be answering calls all day in my workstation. So how exactly do you want me to influence others on my team? How am I going to do that? That's a great question. I actually thought about it this morning. I was like, well, if I'm going to make this applicable to everybody that's sitting here, I'm going to probably need to explain how they can do this today, or else this is going to go probably in one ear, out the other, because, well, that's great, completely agree, maybe not completely. I agree with some of the stuff you said. However, I'm not really sure how I'm going to do that today. So, good. All right, well, good. I got some suggestions. So, how am I going to influence today those on my team? So, I will pose this question first. What if we viewed leadership as an ongoing service call? Let's think about that for a minute. So, what if we viewed leadership as an ongoing service call? So if we did that, and our goal is to influence, what does that look like from the customer's perspective? I said we could be a leader at home. We could be a leader at work. Could we be a leader when we're sitting across from that customer? Could we, on our drive to that customer's house, make, or on that phone call, or whatever it may be, could we make the commitment to being a leader? Because at the end of the day, leadership is influence, right? So how am I going to influence this customer? Now, many may think, well, how am I going to influence this customer to buy something, right? Need them to, write me a check. No. Influence is helping someone grow, is letting them know that you are there to support them. Is helping them make the best decision possible. So what if you approached your first call today with the commitment that I am going to be the best leader possible? Because at the end of the day, your customer called you for a reason. You're talking to them for a reason. Because they got a problem and they need a professional to fix it. But we all know that an approach that would lack leadership would be, hey, you got a problem. Yeah, here's what it's going to cost to fix it. You want to do it? No, you didn't want to do it? Must be a problem with you. I knew what the answer was. You didn't go with it. Sorry about you. A leadership perspective may be you walk in with that high character. You walk in and let them know that you're there to take care of them. You're there to help them. A leadership role may mean that you ask really, really good questions. And they know through your questioning that you truly are there to take care of them. That's what we're out to do. A leadership role may mean that you're open to learning something. Hey, you know what? I have really never seen anything like this, but I'm going to really do my best to investigate this. I'm going to give a call to somebody. I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that you have all of the information you need to make a great decision today. While I'm here, I'd like to take a look at, I'm the professional. Heck, I do this on a daily basis. I'm sure you probably got some other issues in the house. If you'd like, I can take a look at those too and get you some information on that stuff. And that way you can make an informed decision about the entire system in your house. Not here to sell you anything. I'm here to help you. It's when we try to sell, we step out of that leadership role and into the salesman role. If you showed up for your customer as a leader, what do you think the chances are that they'd want to do business with you? What do you think the chances are that they would want to follow you? It all comes down to influence. That's the determining factor in leadership. How much influence do you have? You know, as I was thinking through this and how to relate it to what we do on a daily basis, the funny thing is that whether you're a manager here in the building and you may not see a customer today, your job is influence. Your job is service to others. And there's some of you that'll go and see 3 and 4 customers today. And your job is service to others. You see, leadership is all the same. A little bit different, it's a little bit nuanced, but we are all leading today. You guys are leading by sitting in this room. Is anybody watching you? Maybe. I mean, I'm the only one on the Zoom, so I guess people are watching me, technically. Bad question. But is anybody watching you? No. But does it matter? Because the hope is that you leave here with a little bit of information. You leave here having learned something. And you take your character with your energy and morale and willingness to share that with somebody, or to share a lesson that you may have learned, or to show up for a customer wanting to be a leader rather than wanting to sell them something, then it doesn't matter who's watching. Because what I can tell you is people will begin to watch if you do that consistently. And that's what we're all after, right? Is consistent leadership. That consistent character that people want to follow. Consistency. What would it look like if you showed up with just an immense amount of energy and passion for taking care of people, for making sure that everybody had what they needed, for going above and beyond to help somebody today? How would that make you feel? We're pretty good. That's okay. That's good. That's what we're after. It should make you feel good. It should make you want to do it again and continue to do it again and again and again. That's when your influence multiplies. That's when it compounds. And that is the most wonderful thing about leadership, is your influence will compound faster than anything else you can do. And the great thing about it is you have complete control over it. You have complete control over how much influence you will have in this world. It does not matter what you do. Because guess what? You know where I got the quote, "How you do anything is how you do everything"? I'll trace the origins of that quote. So, that quote was, so this will be on the podcast here in a couple weeks. I got this from a podcast guest that I had on last week. He's a friend of mine in Michigan. He told me this. He told me this because someone at Nexstar told him this quote, and someone told him this quote because someone else, a fellow colleague at Nexstar, told him this quote while in the break room. And the really cool part is the guy that I interviewed's 13-year-old son has that quote as his background on his phone. And I've been trying to live this quote for the last 5 days. It's very tough. But I've been trying to do it for 5 days, and I just told 300 people about it yesterday. So that one guy in the break room who it all started with, I brought up the example of drying your dishes yesterday at the meeting. So the example was brought up because a fellow coworker was taking dishes out of the dishwasher, not drying them off and putting them away in the next door cafeteria. And one of his coworkers said to him, "Hey man, you got to dry those off. You can't put those in there wet. You got to dry those off. How you do anything is how you do everything." And because he said that to him, because he reached out, because he was a leader in the break room about dishes in a cupboard, because that guy, because I know him, how he does anything is how he does everything. That is what being a leader is about. Do you know how many dishes I've dried off this week? A lot. I've never dried, I take great pride in putting them in there it's not that wet. Let's set it up. It'll dry. Okay, cool. Got that one. Go back. You shake it off out of the dishwasher. Does anybody's dishwasher actually dry the dishes? No. There's always water sitting in them. My wife's notorious for putting the bowl. You cannot put the bowl. You got to turn it over. Or if you put it like this, it's going to be filled with water. It's going to get all over the place. You usually end up dumping it on the floor. It sucks. But that simple example has literally led like this morning. Coffee spoon, stirred my coffee, washed it off, dried it off, put it back in the drawer. Who cares? Was anybody watching? No, I was the only one up. But there again, those little things add up to big influence. So that little thing, when you compliment a customer today, when you show them, tell them something new, that goes a long way, but it's not going to be immediate. But planting those little seeds all over life, that is leadership. That is what we are here to do. We are here to provide as much influence on a daily basis as we can. And the best part of that, the part that I love so much about influence, is you don't have to be at work. You don't. You can influence people everywhere. You can influence people by not flipping them off if they cut you off in traffic. By just acknowledge them. Hey, I've made mistakes too. Been there, cut people off. Sorry, didn't see you there. My mistake. In the grocery store, letting somebody go in front of you, or saying excuse me, or sorry, or whatever it is. All of those things. What if everybody did that on a daily basis? What would the world look like? It'd be a lot better place to live, for sure. But guess what? If you do it today, that influence will compound. I'm pretty sure that the guy who talked about the dishes in the break room didn't intend for a 13-year-old boy to have that as his background on his phone, because he said that to a fellow coworker. Probably didn't, but how cool is that? Everybody would say, yeah, sign me up for that. If one day someone would tell me that about something I said, I'd feel pretty damn good. Sounds like a good thing. Well, the cool thing is we all have the opportunity to do that today. And the best part is if you do take that challenge, if you do go ahead and take that on, people will follow you. The guy who first said that, I'd follow him anywhere. And I don't know him extremely well, but I know him well enough. I know stories like that are not the only stories. But I know that guy, if I'm ever at a Nexstar event, guess what? When I go to work out in the morning, I'll find him there. Guess what? When I see him out and about, he always has a smile on his face. He's always shaking hands with somebody, always asking how they're doing, always asking how he can help. That's leadership. We all have the opportunity to do this on a daily basis. And what you will find is that you will start to attract the things that you want. It begins and ends with leadership. One of the things that I've done in order to, some people find this very, very difficult, or not very difficult, but just challenging, like, okay, leadership, how do I do this every day, all day? And so what I would challenge you to do is, when you think about leadership and you just replace it with the word influence, it's not what kind of leader do you want to be, because that can get challenging, right? Then you can think, well, I'm not leading anybody, or, well, leadership with a customer, that sounds kind of weird. Like, what if I showed up and told them I wanted to be a leader today? They're probably going to look at me like I got 3 heads. Like, whoa. But what if we took the word leadership and replaced it with influence? Not what kind of leader do you want to be today? Because I will agree, that sounds kind of canned, if you will. Like, what kind of leader are you going to be today? Like, all right, coach, settle down. But what if you woke up and asked yourself, what kind of influence am I going to have today? If influence was all you had, what kind of influence am I going to have today? How am I going to treat those around me? How am I going to treat customers? How am I going to help others? So I challenge you to think in that respect. What kind of influence are you going to have today? Because at the end of the day, that is all you have. All we have is influence. Could be positive, could be negative, could be no influence at all. But we all have the choice. We all have the opportunity today and every day forward to be the best influencer we can be. And if we do that, I am telling you, success will find you in ways you never thought possible. Because it can't help but find those who are creating a positive influence.